The Israeli army has been relentlessly bombing the Gaza Strip since October 7th. Journalists have been able to report on the territory's destruction thanks to the few media still present there, who have been using some of its tall buildings to document the conflict. Agence France-Presse and the Palestine Media Group have broadcast images live out of Gaza since the start of the conflict, with PMG's footage continuously broadcast live by Reuters. But on November 2nd, there were several explosions near the cameras of both agencies. What happened? Le Monde, with Forbidden Stories and other international media, has investigated how journalists have been targeted in Palestine, which can constitute a war crime. We looked at how media professionals have been prevented from doing their job, injured, and even killed. We can reveal that 2 news agencies were targeted by the Israeli army on November 2nd. It was on that day that Israeli troops had completed their siege of Gaza City.
לוחמי צה"ל השלימו את כיתור העיר עזה, המוקד של ארגון הטרור חמאס.
After setting up camp in the north, the IDF moved around the city to the south to reach the sea. They were only a few kilometers from the Hajji Tower, which AFP uses for its offices on the top 3 floors. That morning, like the others before it since October 7th, an AFP camera was filming from the 10th floor. The press agency broadcast a live feed of explosions in Gaza City. At 11:55, one shook the building. Followed by a second at 11:56. 1 minute later, a projectile hit the 11th floor, directly above and to the right of AFP's camera. 12 minutes later, a 4th explosion shook the 11th floor again. Some of the Bureau's offices were damaged, and at least one of the munitions exploded in the server room. But AFP's offices were not the only ones hit that morning. An hour before, AFP's live feed showed the Al-Ghafari Tower, 300 meters away. At 11:04, its 16th floor was hit. The building housed the offices of PMG, the Palestine Media Group, where journalists from Gaza were based. Cameras broadcast a live feed of Gaza for Reuters, Al Arabiya, and other media from this floor. At the time of the strike, 2 journalists were present. One of them, Ismail Abu Haddab, was severely injured in the legs. But where did the projectiles come from? Let's take a closer look at the footage of these explosions. A few seconds before each one, there are flashes of light, always in the same place. And each time, 4.2 seconds after the flash, comes the explosion. It was the same at the Al-Ghafari Tower. This time, a flash of light appears slightly to the right, and 4 seconds later, in the time between these explosions, other flashes occur in the same area. When isolating the sound, you can even hear them detonate. These flashes and detonations are in fact shots being fired. They're behind the explosions on the Hajji and Al-Ghafari Towers. Using visual markers, we can determine the approximate direction they came from. "8.5 seconds elapsed between each of the flashes and detonations. This duration and the speed of the sound tell us the detonations took place some 2,950 meters from the Hajji Tower. So the shots were fired from here. Who fired them? Ammunition has several distinctive features. Its average speed is around 2,500 kilometers per hour, twice the speed of sound. It emits an intense flash of light when fired, and it's accurate enough to hit a target 3 kilometers away. These features leave only one possibility: shells. They can be fired from tanks or howitzers. There's no weapon in the Palestinian arsenal that fits this description. Footage broadcast from the Al-Ghafari Tower the day before the explosion show Israeli tanks in the vicinity of the blast zone. In the area where the shots were fired, tank tracks were visible the next day. Using satellite images, we found they were not there the days before the attack. Some of these Israeli tanks were therefore likely responsible for firing on the Hajji and Al-Ghafari towers. The Israeli army knew what these buildings were used for. AFP shared the coordinates of its offices several times and received this reply 5 days before the strike.
We have transmitted the information you sent us about the coordination of your teams in Gaza. Under these circumstances, we cannot guarantee your employees' safety.
Contacted a few days after the strike, the Israeli army claimed the building was not targeted in any way, but that a strike nearby might have caused debris. After we shared our investigation, the Israeli army said they were not aware of a second strike near the Hajji Tower on November 2nd, and that they were not aware of a strike on the Al-Ghafari Tower on that day either. Since November 12th, there has been no live video feed from Gaza, and Palestinian journalists are still constantly exposed to danger. Our investigation found that since October 7th, 14 journalists have been killed, mainly in bombardments, while wearing a flak jacket or helmet bearing the press logo. Some of them were clearly identifiable during the strikes. For example, Basil Keradine, a freelance journalist, narrowly escaped a strike in February while wearing a press jacket.
جيد أن هذا الحادث أرخت بظلالها بشكل كبير علينا من ناحية عملية ومن ناحية نفسية. يعني أن تشعر للحظة ما أنك مستهدف وأن حياتك قد تكون في خطر لا لشيء إلا لأنك تؤدي عملك فقط. يعني من وقتها أخذنا قرار بأن العمل سيتم تخفيفه بشكل كبير حتى أننا حتى هذه اللحظة ربما يعني لم نعمل بقدرة تصل إلى 10%.
The Israeli army said it did not deliberately target journalists. Since October 7th, over 37,000 people have died in Gaza, according to the territory's Ministry of Health.